Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on volumes 19 and 20 of Seraph of the End. We're looking at chapters 75 through 84 in this video, and I'll be honest, this last week has been really busy, and I've not gotten a chance to read any more on the Seraph of the End light novel in volume 2 of Guren Ichinose. I sadly have not been able to get to it, so I'm hoping that I'll get some extra time this week to dive more into that second half of volume 2 before we get into the previous volumes, but it's just been a really busy week. And more so than usual in the summer, so I just didn't get a chance to get to it, but that's okay. So I didn't want to wait any longer, though. I was like, well, maybe I should wait until I get a chance to read the novel, and I'm like, no, I'm just going to go ahead and read the chapters, because that is the one good thing about the light novel, is that it's just supplementary information. So I know that reading the second half, I'll probably go back at these chapters that I'm reading now and be like, oh, all this stuff makes much more sense, especially since we have Saito being involved, old Mr. Stafford or whatever, Rigger, and all of that business with him and the angels and all that coming into play. But yeah, crazy stuff happening, right? So Shinoa may be becoming a vampire because the first vampire has, like, Doki has, like, taken over her and possessed her, and so is that going to turn her into a vampire? It's very weird because Kureto and his father, Tinri, neither of them became vampires by being possessed by... But then again, they weren't fully possessed. Their demons were holding them back. So Shinoa, because she doesn't have the demon inside of her necessarily to the capacity that Kureto and his father did, maybe that's why she's turning into a vampire. This series, it just takes all the lore that you think about vampires and stuff, and it's like, yeah, let's just make that crazy. So I don't know. I don't know if Shinoa's going to become a vampire like Mika. That would be very interesting if she became like Mika and was a vampire. That would be an interesting dynamic, especially because the last volume has had Maharu being like, oh, you love you. And I'm like, no. I was like, Mika and you love each other, but Shinoa loves you, I think, platonically, but not, like, sexually. Maharu, she's just this horny demon. Her and Guren need to go get a room. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what all is going to happen in these chapters for these two volumes. And looking at it now, right now, I looked on Viz, and we're at chapters 116 of the volume right now, so we're getting closer. We're catching up. We're already at 75, so we really have only, like, I don't know, 30 more chapters and then we're caught up. Crazy talk. And I feel like Seraph of the End only releases monthly. So once we catch up with it, it may just be waiting until we have a full... I may go at that point from doing 2 volumes to doing just like 1 volume at a time and going from there. That may be what I end up doing, is just doing 1 volume at a time and talking about it. Or doing 2. I don't know. I like the 2 format. It would just mean a longer wait in between volumes, but we'd start a new series at some point, so just be to keep those of you that like Seraph of the End, just to keep us all updated. I don't know. With Toilet Bound Hanago-kun, I basically am reading a volume like every 6 months, and it's good, but I have to go back and like reread and prep myself and remind myself what's happened, but it's worth it, so... We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But speaking of crossing over, let's see if old Shinoa actually becomes a vampire or not. I don't know. So we're going to find out and do volumes 19 and 20 of Seraph of the End, chapters 75 through 84. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. This is just bonkers. I do feel like we are getting more into what's going on. I feel like it's slowly but surely the world building is kind of, it's funny because the world building with this, it's starting to come together, but at the same time it's getting more complicated, but the lines between everything is starting to make sense. So the first progenitor, Sigma, or Sigu or Siga, we'll get back to them. So basically they committed the first taboo, whatever that was, and we don't know the full story with the first progenitor of how they became a vampire exactly, how they tied in how the angels tie into all of this. We're not sure. The big mystery right now is with the first progenitor and their backstory, because we're getting Yu's backstory, we're getting Ashera's backstory, and with Saito and all them, but the first progenitor is the big mystery box. They're the one that we're not sure about, and how this whole thing with demons and angels, how they're all connected is the part that's getting scary. and muddled. But so Shinoa is not necessarily becoming a vampire. She's just being possessed by the first vampire to the point where it's trying to like assimilate and use her body as a host body. And so in order to use her body as a host body, it would need to become a vampire. That's kind of the gist. And then Ferid, for the record, Ferid and Crowley are amazing. They're like two of my favorite characters now in this series. I didn't care for Crowley in the anime, but like post-anime, Crowley's become one of my favorite characters. I freaking love Ferid. He's such a diva and he's ridiculous. And I feel like he's just so chaotic and does whatever he wants. And we get a little bit more into Ferid with these volumes, which is interesting because you wouldn't think he'd be the focal point, but Ferid is all about using people for his own means, but he's not really like, he's kind of like, he's chaotic evil, but it's chaotic. So you can't really trust him, but he's not like true evil. He's not like, oh, just massacre everybody. There's a cunning to Ferid and like a diva-ishness to him. And it's just so bizarre. His character's so interesting and I kind of love it. But Saito, oh, Rigger Stafford, he is freaky and messed up. And maybe is dead, who knows? But he's become a demon. So he's augmented his body and manipulated it over the last 2,000 years to be a demon, because we established the whole chains thing is becoming a full demon, supposedly. And so Guren kind of decides to go that route too, which it all in lines. I feel like I'm spoiled a little bit with the novel because I didn't know his dad got beheaded, so that's going to be interesting to see in the novel. But I feel like a lot of the things with Guren and Maharu were tying back to the light novel in several of those chapters, and I was like, okay, cool. For the record, Ferid's vampire drip with the cape. I love Ferid's look now with his hair all down and his black cloak. I love Ferid's new look. His new look is wonderful and I hope he keeps it. It's great. This like vampire, he looks like a vampire out of a movie. It's wonderful. Ferid's having the time of his life in this. It's great. God, and we get Shinya in this. We get insight into Shinya. And so Guren can't reveal what his plan is, and Maharu talks about how what is possessing Guren is love and friendship, that Guren will do anything to save his friends and those he cares about, even if it means sacrificing himself. Like, he's been that way, and the novel kind of goes into that too. I like the idea that with Guren, he's always been on the losing side, but despite that, he keeps trying over and over again to succeed, even when he knows he's fighting a losing battle. It's one of the reasons Shinya loves him. I'm glad we're getting that out in now, that Shinya does actually, he says it's more of an idolization, but I'm like, no, you love Guren. Like that, the parts of I haven't gotten fully through the novel yet, but even in parts 1 and 2 of the novel, you can tell that Shinya is attracted to Guren for some reason. There's something there that Shinya latches onto, and we kind of get into it with these volumes. But yeah, Ferid just coming around being like, hey, if I kill you, then you can't transform. Great, but doesn't work. It just aggravates the first progenitor to the point where they like fight him. And then in chapter 76, I love this line from Ferid where he's like, what's the point? He's like, you're the first. What was the point of everything? What's the point of this destroyed world? He's like, why are these bodies that won't die when they're cut in half, when their head's cut off? He's like, what's the point in giving vampires bodies that just won't die when we're never given a reason to live? Like that line there, that was like, oh, because Ferid's like, what's my point of being here? Why am I in this undying body? What was the point of it all? Like, and I feel like Ferid never got an answer to that. And so it's kind of what's been spurring him on, is he wants to know what's the meaning of it all. Like, why is he still here? He's like, we're cursed. So it's like all the idea, I like the idea we're delving into, is that humanity is in multiple ways just cursed by their desires, by sin, by all of this. And it kind of just manifests in this series in multiple ways. So with like Ferid and the vampires, it's like they're undead bodies. They need blood to keep on living, but there's no function. There's no heart beating. They're just these shells that are cursed to live in this existence forever, right? Unless, this cursed gear destroys them, right? And so then you have humans that are possessed by demons, and the demons manifest and feed on their desires and amplify them and just make them more out of control, right? So it's I like that the author is making this like commentary on how you know, how we can become husks of ourselves and how our inner demons can control us. And this series kind of manifests that in a physical sense, right? But it's in a way where there's so much moral ambiguity that you're not exactly sure who's the bad guy and who's the good guy in all of this. It's just like, we don't know the full story. And that's kind of what's cool, is that we don't know the full story. So we're getting bits and pieces of it slowly but surely, but it's all starting to come together, just in different ways. So yeah, so Les Carr and them, they're all there. I like Giles. Giles has grown on me. I kind of like his character. He's definitely grown on me. He's very serious. And then Kai Luke. Kai Luke is just like chaos. Just he's like, I was like, I'm so excited. I'm gonna kill whoever did this. Like, he's so upbeat and positive about it. I'm like, he's about like Ferid, honestly. But yeah, we see Rigger from the start, back in the past, alongside Giles, back when Rigger had this like blonde hair and blue eyes and looks nothing like he looks now, and has, you know, daddy issues where he wants his father to notice him and has wanted him to notice him the last 2,000 years. It's like, oh my God, got some issues. And Ferid's like, I don't have a daddy complex. He calls him Daddy Dearest, but he's like, I don't have a daddy complex. I love that Crowley's like, you have a Lolita complex. And he's like, shh. I'm like, yes, you do. But yeah, so I am curious how much Rigger has like augmented himself to be different. It's kind of creepy, because even his eyes and everything have changed, right? And so the Hakuya sect, they've all become vampires, like, over the course of this. Like, there's humans that are still around, but a lot of the Hakuya sect have been transformed into vampires, which is terrifying. Which is terrifying, and they're going to go destroy the Japanese demon army, like you do. And so then we get a little bit about Yu and Mika, but Yu kind of gets tossed to the wayside in these volumes. Yu decided that he'd just try to help save Shinoa, and he let them take him away. And Mika's just like, damn it, I want to help save my friend. And Guren's like, look, you can't do this on your own. For as much as Guren frustrates me in this series, because Guren is Guren, he does make a good point when Shinya and Corretto and him corner Mika. He's like, you want to take you and run off and be by yourself. He's like, but you can't do that. He's like, you quit throwing a tantrum. You can either join us and try to help out. And I love that Mika's like, it's not fair. And he's like, no. He's like, quit throwing a tantrum. He's like, you can't do this alone. Nobody can. Anybody who's on their own is easy pickings. And so Mika's like, fine. I'll just go get you myself. And I love Ferid just showing up being like, run now, please. And so, God, Kimazuki, we'll talk about him and Yoichi. But, so basically, throughout this entire thing, the idea was to get these little knives. There's 7 total, and they're the ways in which they could possibly restrain the first progenitor. And so they have 3 together between, or I guess 4 now together between Guren and the others. But the only way to get them is to get them from those that are Seraphs of the End. So they have 4, so there's 3 left that we don't know about. But you have to kill that person to get it. Well, but then the one boy wasn't killed. The boy that they saved back there, he wasn't killed. They just managed to get it out of him. But Guren he killed Kimazuki's sister. I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, don't worry, we'll just resurrect her along with the others. And Yoichi's like, oh, hell no. Like, that's just... So poor Mitsuba, she gets kind of tossed out in this. I do like Jigenso. Jigenso, the blade, the one Jigenso curse gear. What a freaking cool blade and power. It kind of reminds me of... Kurogiri from My Hero Academia with his power, but I love the idea of like ripping a hole in a dimension and moving from one area to the other, and Ferid being like, I can use this. Ferid being like, let's do this, let's use this power. So we finally get backstory with Ashera and the whole thing of him, which, to be honest, chapter 78, the Dark Ages of Greece, like, these chapters of Ashera's backstory are really dark, and they go in some places that the themes are so mature that you're like, ooh, because Ashera makes the note when he's picked up by Siga. He basically notes, he's like, this guy's been to the slave driver many times, and yet me and you are the only ones here. So that means that there have been other kids that have been taken care of. And and they're supposed to be slaves, but they get fed really well. And Ashera starts to get nervous when he asks you, he's like, what do you do? You're a slave. And you're like, I just play around and eat food all day. And he's like, that seems like it's not good. And he even asks him. And so you get the impression that he's like, okay, these kids have probably been picked up by him over and over again. And maybe he's a serial killer and maybe he's killing all of them. But then he gets it. He goes to a dark place. It reminded me a lot of Mika. Ashera reminded me a lot of Mika in these chapters. Because he's like, does he summon you at night to his chamber? And you's like, yeah, he does do that just sometimes. And Ashera's like, And I thought it was implying kind of like with Mika back when they were at the orphanage, him going to see Ferid, there is that like sexual implication there that he was going and he was getting his blood sucked, but the implication is there. And so when Ashera's asking you, he's like, you're going to his chambers at night. Are you? And he's like, well, yeah, just sometimes. And he doesn't seem to be bothered by it. So Ashera's like, okay, does that mean that, the other ones have died so quickly he's needed to get more? He's like, we're in danger. He's like, I don't feel comfortable here. And then we find out that you has been experimented on and made into a Seraph. Was made into a Seraph. And Ashera's like, oh my God. And Ashera just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and ended up getting killed by you. The chapter Eternal Hell. Oh my God. So ends up getting attacked by you, and you ends up killing him. And when he drags him like through the air and Ashera thinks he's died and it's all a dream. Oh my God. That was just terrifying. And then the first just chops off Yu's head, but he ends up getting some of the blood into Ashera's mouth, and Ashera just happens to be compatible with him. So Ashera ends up becoming a vampire. And so we find the idea that Giles and Saito and Ashera have been the three whose blood was compatible, and they ended up becoming vampires with the first progenitor, with Siga. And so he kills Yu. He like holds up Yu's head in his hand. Like, again, this series in Decapitated Heads like holds up Yu's head and lets him drink Yu's blood, which makes it seem like it's all the more fate that brought you and Mika together, or you and Ashera together in the present time to bring these two together. Only now it's Ashera inside of you instead of you inside of Ashera. It's like flipped, right? He's like, I'm gonna have to look deeper into your bloodline. But yeah, he wakes up, and then it's interesting to see Saito be like, oh, look, now there's three of us. And Giles is like, yippee. I love that Giles is just really not happy to be there. And Saito's like, oh, look, he's awake. Now there's more of us. It's like Saito Rigger always seems like there's just something amiss with him, right? But they're also adults when all this happens. So they were turned later on, which is interesting. Whereas Ashera's still a kid. And I like that they go through like everything that you see about being a vampire, like being able to sense things, like, a heightened sense of everything, and then this desire for human blood and all of that. And so he asks where Siga is. And so they go to all these test tubes in this, which is supposed to be ancient Greece. And there's test tubes in ancient Greece, which is problematic. And there's all these test tubes with all of these cells in them. And Yu is back. It shows Yu right back from where he was. And there's this little like thing above him. And he's like, Siga, what did you do to me? What have I become? What is this? He's like, this is hell. So I'm wondering, are all these little cells, are they all just Yu's been cloned over and over again? Are they just clones of you that have existed throughout time over and over? And you can't remember any further back because he's just been cloned over and over again? I wonder, they called him the devil. And so I wonder if Yu is Yu actually like, is it the devil and Yu is it? And they've just been cloning him over, and they've just taken cells and made multiples of him over across time to experiment on over and over again. The fudge. We don't have answers yet as to what that little bizarre thing is, but you is still coming back apparently, and we see that Ashera is like, I want to find my sister, and that's my desire. He's like, you have to have a reason to live, and he's like, yeah. He's like, I have a reason to live, and it's to find my sister again. Which means that over the last 2,000 years, he's not found Cruel, and now here we are. Or they did find Cruel, right? Because it did show them together with the first progenitor. So he did eventually find Cruel, and they turned her into a vampire. So something's happened. We don't have the full backstory all completed yet, but... And that would make sense that maybe the reason Cruel knew you is because she saw him back in the past with Ashera and them, if it was a version of you, like a clone of him again. Huh. Interesting. So yeah. So then, yeah, Saito is back. He's like, you retrieved him. And then, so they said the sun god Aten and Mikaela, we have to strip them away from Erd and the First. So the sun god Aten, is that you? Is it not like, is by the devil inside you? Is it the sun god and Mikaela? Interesting. We've not fully gotten the explanation of that yet, but I'm curious. And so then, yeah. So then Rigger shows up. Rigger shows up to meet up with the first progenitor, and they scale this all-out battle. And yeah, Rigger has definite, like, dad issues. He is a dad complex and just wants his father to notice him. I'm guessing that, like Ferid, he was discarded, whereas Ferid didn't really care about being discarded. He just wants to know what the purpose of everything is. Rigger seems affected by the fact that he was discarded. He seems like he's not happy about it. Oh, so then we meet Bastia. I like Bastia's design. She's really cool. I like how she looks in this. She seems very straight-laced and kind of like, she reminds me a lot of Aoi Sengu. She reminds me of like the vampire equivalent of that, which is interesting. But she seems like she was the progenitor made before Ferid. So curious. And of course, Ferid comments that he's like, oh, look, I've got humans that are helping me now. So I made friends. Got lots of friends that can help, combat you. And then Guren decides that he's going to do this ultimate betrayal. Which we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, so we have old Rigger Stafford going after the first progenitor. And then we have this fight between Batea and the others. But she uses Jigeno to get away. And so then the Hakuya sector attacking. It's great. And I like that Ferid takes his time. He stands back a minute and Ferid's like, okay, I need to think. And then I like that Crowley's like, you done thinking? He's like, I figured it out. He's like, I'm going to take that weapon from that one guy and use it. Like, Ferid is playing chess, and I love that these two volumes set up just how much Ferid is thinking ahead and him getting to the point where he's like, no, I know exactly what I'm going to do. When he attacks, Guren and all of them, or when he attacks Saito, not Guren. With Guren, he attacks. But it's nice to see that Ferid has set this all up from, chapters back, and now we get the payoff of it. This series moves pretty quickly. I'm surprised how fast we got through these chapters. It's pretty great. I also love that we get a little bit of Ferid and Shinya working together. I actually like Ferid and Shinya together a lot because they kind of have the same, sarcastic facade personalities. Both Shinya and Ferid put on these kind of facades of being extra or sarcastic or goofy, but underneath it all, there's, a much more serious, more, detached layer to them. I think that's why Guren works with both of them, because they're compatible with Guren. But yeah, I really want to see more of Ferid and Shinya talking. I liked the panels that they shared together in chapter 80. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, so poor Kimazuki. And Saito told him to run away with her. So he's like, get out of here. I wonder if Saito knew that Guren was going to attack her eventually. I feel like he did. But he tells them to run away and get away so that the Hakuya sect, so that they can't get them. So that the first progenitor can't get them, right? Because that all makes sense now. Saito wanted Kimazuki to get away with his sister so that the first progenitor, Susigu, couldn't get her. But he probably knew that Guren was going to go after her outside of that facility. So that all makes sense. And he's like, we're going to restrain you. And I love that. And again, just like in the anime, they use this same spell, taking the life energy out of everybody. And it's funny seeing seeing Mito and them react to Guren and everything, if you've read the novels, like, and you know their relationship more, it hits you that much harder, and you're like, damn it. You're like, ugh. And so, yeah, at this point, we see that Saito really is a demon and is just like the chain is attaching his head. Like, is his brain even there? Like, at this point, he's just not even, he is not a human at all. He is a full-on demon. It's creepy. The whole thing with the chain attaching to his head is disturbing. It's just a lot. It is a lot. And just the chain with the head floating. I'm like, I don't know if I can imagine the anime animating this, if I'm honest. I'm like, some of this is so bizarre that I'm like, would the anime animate this? Like his head floating above on a chain? I just don't know. And even when the chain's cut, it just makes more chains. So it's so creepy. And then the chains and everything coming out of him like form these beasts of the apocalypse, this ram and jaguar and a wolf and a lion and a dragon. It's like, oh my God. Oh. And he's like, it's all smoke and mirrors. He's like, isn't it ironic that you have the wings of an angel? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have these wings despite losing the sun forever and falling into darkness, all because of a simple taboo. So something happened with the first progenitor to start all this, and we just don't know the full details. So that's what we're waiting to find out, right? Mm. And then, yeah, Saito's like, have I managed to make you see me? It's like if this has all just been because you wanted your daddy to notice you, what the hell? Like, you could have done this a little earlier than 2,000 years ago. Than 2,000 years later. I just feel bad for Mika and all this. Mika is just trying to get back to you. And Mika's like, why do I have to deal with all of this nonsense? It's a lot. It's a lot. And so, yeah, Maharu tells him to close his eyes and become the other Guren, to become this demon. These last two chapters 82, 83, and 84 are just wild. I do love, I'm going to take a picture of it while I'm thinking of it. I do love the color spread of chapter 82 with the purples and with the first progenitor that's taken over Shinoa and with Mika and you. I do love it quite a lot. It's really nice. But yeah, so these two are fighting all out and everybody's like, I like that Goshi's like, maybe we're not meant to be here. We're not doing well here. We need to just, it's like two kaiju fighting. We need to leave. I'm like, oh my God. And so then, yeah, old Ferid talking about Daddy Dearest. It's great. And him just waiting. He's waiting for the opportune moment. Waiting for Guren to act. Like Ferid, ever since the anime, ever since way back in Shibuya, Ferid has been using Guren and knowing what Guren's plan was this whole time. Ferid playing the chess game, right? Mm-hmm. And so Maharu's asking him to turn into a demon. And so all this time, Guren has just wanted to save people and to have the power to save the people he cares about, and he's always failed. And it's gotten to the point where he's like, if I could just become a demon, maybe it would work out. And I'm like, it's so sad that, and we cut back to the beginning of the novel, the beginning of the light novel, where he's like, since they were 5 years old, he's like, I learned to hate how weak I was, how powerless I was to protect the ones I loved. I told myself that someday I'd have the strength I needed to keep the people I cared about safe. But even now, I can't do it. He's like, I don't have any choice but to become a demon. And Maharu tries to tell him that it's not necessarily his fault. She's like, the bad things of this world were going to happen regardless. Somebody was going to do it. And he's like, but that someone is still me. I ended up doing it. And she's like, no, we did it. It's our fault the world's become hell. And now you're trying to take responsibility. Yep. And so then, yeah, all the chains and stuff coming out. Ugh. Yeah, and so, yep, she's like, I'll take half the demon into me and I won't, that way you won't become berserk. And then the moment that Shinya and them saw Maharu, Shinya's like, holy hell no. And if you know from the novel, Shinya realizes just how batshit crazy Maharu was when she was possessed by her demon. So he's like, nope, get away from Guren, don't you dare. And then all of them realize that she's there. And she's like, close your eyes. I love that she puts her hand in front of Guren's face to close them. And then he ends up stabbing her with the sword. And then, the idea, again, how would they animate this? How would they animate Noya, this demon, coming out of Maharu? So this is the demon that possessed her. And now it's going to possess him. Yeah, how? Just how? This thing is disgusting and it just, like, comes out of her. I don't think they could do that without being censored. No way. And even Mika notices. He's like, what the hell is this? And even the progenitor's like, something's happening. And he's like, I don't know. Saito's like, who knows what's happening? And Cruel's like, I need to hurry up and get there. So Cruel kind of knows what's up. I'm guessing because Maharu told her. And so Noya, she's like, I'm the most powerful demon. Oh my god. Nope. So fun times. So Guren takes the power of Noya, this super powerful demon that had taken over Maharu. And Shinya tries to save Guren. And I love that we get to see Shinya's demon. Shinya's demon is surprisingly, like, low-key, like, super chill. Like, Byakumaru is, like, super, super chill. He's just, like, sitting there with his little tiger. I like he has his tiger hood over him and the furs. And he's like, your thing is that you're able to feel nothing. And this was in the first part of book 2 that Shinya killed. There was all these kids put together in a room, and whoever survived was the one that was going to be betrothed to Maharu. And Shinya's the one that killed all the other kids. And I like that in the rain we see Maharu looking down at him. And I like that Shinya reverts to his child form here to, like, talk to his demon. He's like, I don't need to be empathetic and care. The world's just cruel. It's just the way everything works. He's like, you make effort to acquire something, and in the end, you just lose it. Effort is meaningless. But he's naturally talented, so he can't help it, right? So it kind of is reflected in the novel that Shinya tries to get Maharu, and then he doesn't even get her at the end. She falls for Guren. And here's the thing. He's like, Guren is beyond saving. He's like, no, I'm going to save him. He's like, what makes you so obsessed with him? And Shinya says, oh, come on, you're my demon. You know that. I'm like, he loves Guren, damn it. He's like, it's because he has what you do not, right? And he's like, And so they talk about how Guren he lives in a world more soaked in despair and helplessness than even you. He was born into a family that exists solely so it can be derided by the Hiragi family, saddled with a fate which decrees he'll never acquire anything no matter how hard he tries. That's the thing about Guren. He has this horrible fate that he's never going to get what he wants. And Shinya's like, but he doesn't give up. He keeps trying. No matter how many times he fails, despite knowing whatever he tries is never going to work, he never gives up. It's like he's an idiot. And he's like, I do hate idiots. That's why I hate Guren. He's like, but you won't abandon him. He's like, no. And then the demon says, it's as if you're in love. And Shinya's like, no. It's just your garden variety idolization. I'm like, no, I don't believe that. I'm like, he is in love. He does love Guren. He's like, I understand why Maharu chose him over me. And then the demon's like, are you going to die here? Because that'd be really bad. I don't want you to die. And he's like, he hasn't given up on living, so I can't give up before him. And so he's like, I'll never give up on Guren, and that's why I need this power. Oh my gosh. And so yeah, he gets beyond. So then he becomes a demon with the horns so that he can get that, but Guren doesn't let him go, doesn't let him get any closer. He ends up leaving all of them. Shinya and all of them. And you can see that there is that, God, I love the way that they have Noya like dripping in the black. It's just like dripping in ink, and Maharu's like keeping it at bay. And so, God, it's just barely keeping Guren from being completely devoured by it. And so then, yeah, he has all this power, and he says he's going to save the world. It's like, damn. At this point, it's like, who is saving the world? Is it demons? Is it angels? Is it humans? We don't know. But I love that this entire time, amidst all these chains and everything, Ferid's just been walking around, like, holding this little knife, balancing it on his finger, and Curly's like, what you doing that for? And he's like, oh, this is super important. Like, at chapter 84, oh my God, he's like, this has been what he's been looking for 1,000 years. I'm waiting for the signal, which is Guren. So, yeah. I have been for hundreds of years. So Ferid has just been biding his time, playing 4D chess, waiting for the right moment to help Guren. To help contain the first progenitor. Interesting. And so then, yeah. And Shinya still isn't giving up. He's like, I have to find Guren. This is really sad, though, that Yoichi's like, I'll help you save your sister, Kimazuki. And then they see Guren and they think it's great, but then they notice he has horns. And they're like, oh, it's a demon. And Guren's like, I'm sorry, Kimazuki, but I have to kill your sister. And then he just takes her. Oh. And Kimazuki, him just losing it, and Yoichi being like knocking him out. Yoichi did the right thing. He knocked him out before he could turn like fully into a demon. But him like sitting down crying there. Ugh. I hate that. I hate that Guren's killed her. And that Kimazuki's sister, like the one thing he was trying to protect, is gone. Ugh. And he's like, I need you to collect the body. Collect the body and leave Shibuya. And then he's like, then you mean to say it's possible to bring her back to life? And Guren's like, he doesn't respond. He's like, bringing back humans to life is taboo, right? I thought that's what caused you all the pain in the first place. And he's like, well, your sister died, right? We've still got her body in storage. And Yoichi's like, how dare you? How dare you, like, desecrate my sister's body, like, keeping her when you know what that does? It's like, oh. Like, just Yoi. And we know Yoichi is not a good person. He just puts on an act. But he's like, kill that man. Like, how dare you? And Guren's like, nah. And leaves. And then arrives right in front of the first progenitor. And so, yeah. So then the first progenitor sees that we have not only Guren there, but Maharu and Noya are there as well. And the first progenitor's like, what the heck? And so, of course, Maharu says, I'm going to rescue Shinoa. So I'm like, okay, good. So Maharu, now that she's separated from the demon, from Noya, she seems a little bit more like herself, maybe, which is good. I'm like, I consider that a good thing, possibly. And so he's like, where's the key? And she's like, a sinful key. It's only one. It's not enough to do anything. And then we see that with the key that Guren gave him, that we have, that he has 3 of them. He said it should be enough to seal you away. And she's like, no, it's not nearly enough. And he's like, hurry up, Saito. And this part here, where the first progenitor's like, you know you aren't going to hit me with that. You just have 3 of the nails. It's not enough. Not with that speed. And then Saito's like, well, yeah, no, not as I am, but if I eat 3 more demons. So there's basically 3 demons in Guren right now. There's Guren himself, which has become a demon. There's Noya, and there's Maharu. And Saito was going to betray them and eat Guren. But then Guren's like, yeah, no. And then summoned Ferid. And I love that shot. That shot of Ferid coming out. That shot of Ferid coming out of the hole of Jigeno is so freaking good. I love it. He's like, hey, daddy dearest. And it's like, oh my gosh. So him stabbing Saito and blowing him up. Like, what the heck? And that gives the 3 nails over to Guren, Maharu, and Noya. And then it ends! What the heck? There's a lot happening in these chapters. A lot. A lot happening in these chapters, and I just need to know what happens next. So, oh my gosh. So, but we've got more with you and Ashera's backstory. It's gotten even more complicated, surprising no one. Guren's betrayal makes a lot of sense at the moment. I get why Guren's betrayal is there, why it's a betrayal, because he is abandoning his friends to go do this, but I can see that it is for a decent cause to try to contain the progenitor, because she is causing a lot of issues, or at least he and Shinoa's body is. And meanwhile, Mika's trying to get to you. Meanwhile, Ferid and Crowley are up there, or Ferid's at least up there with all them, attacking Saito. Lots of plot lines in the air, and I'm really excited to see what happens in volumes 21 and 22 now. So these chapters went by really quickly, and it was just like a lot of fast-paced things, but there's so much that I feel like we could talk about below, so I'm very curious to know your comments and what you all thought of this, but I'm excited for the next set of chapters. I don't know about you all, but I'm excited to hear your comments down below, but in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with volumes 21 and 22 of Seraph of the End. Bye.